workshop is for Pollination Revit plugin. And thank you to coming to the workshop that doesn't have AI in it. I saw other ones, and yeah, I was like, oh, anyone is going to join a workshop that doesn't talk about AI. So this is what we're going to talk about. We are going to talk about pollination. Again, I have 2 slides, but then we're going to jump into Revit and try using Revit plugin. We will use the sample model and the advanced model. If you have been in our workshops before, we used to only do the basic sample project before, and I think this is this kind of shows how much progress that we have made, that we can do the sample project in a very short amount of time, and then we can spend more time on the advanced model. And by the end of this workshop, I hope you have a very good sense of how you can use the Revit plugin. So what's Pollination? Pollination is an ecosystem of tools for environmental building design and simulation. Technically, it's tools and services. It's developed and maintained by the same people who develop and maintain Ladybug tools. So it's a product of the same company. It's our commercial product. We still have our open source project, and it will be around. They built on top of each other. Pollination is taking advantage of Ladybug tools. And now some of the products that we develop for Pollination actually feeding back into Ladybug tools. So they're both helping each other and complete each other. So the products that we have are the CAD plugins, desktop solutions. We have apps, which is still in the middle, stay in the middle of the two. And we have cloud computing and a collaboration platform that you can use to work together. I will show a little bit of, Rhino plugin maybe just to see the geometry. And I know a lot of people are interested in continue working on the model in Rhino. I might show apps if you have time. I might run a simulation, but really like the focus today is on the Revit plugin. And between preparing geometry, running simulation, and result visualization also, I want to make sure everyone learns how to prepare the geometry after this workshop first. So learning objectives, just to list them to give you a good idea. You should understand the overall workflow of exporting models. You should gain the ability to identify most common issues in Revit models. So when you receive a Revit model, you know where to start, what are the things that can fail, and understand the best practices to address those. One of the things that I will try, and I'm hopeful you can get a sense, is to get a sense of what's worth fixing in Revit and what are the things that you should just ignore, because it will take a lot of time to fix in Revit probably, and you can fix it quicker in other tools, or it just doesn't worth trying to fix them in Revit. And I think that's the thing that you can get in a workshop more than watching a video tutorial or anything like that. Okay, with that, and if no one has any questions, let's get started. Let's open this famous Revit basic sample project. I have shared one in Revit 2020 with you, but you should be able to find one in other versions. And I think they never really try to fix anything in the sample file, which is great for teaching a project, teaching a workshop. So like it doesn't matter which version you have, you should be good to go. If you have any questions, you can type it in the chat too. At any point, I have the chat open. Chris is here, Sergey is here. They're also going to help as we go. And I assume everyone knows basics about Revit, how to open a project, right? Okay. So let me know otherwise. If you have it open, then go to Pollination tab, under Pollination tab. And the first thing is you should, if you click on License Manager, you should see your license is valid. It might be that you're using the trial license, or you might need to sign in and retrieve a license. But in any case, you should have a valid license. Can you, like, if you don't, copy your information in the chat, and Chris can add you to the license pool for workshops, so you can borrow one during the workshop. I assume everyone has one. So with that, I'll just go ahead, excuse me. I'll just go ahead and click on this 3D view, default 3D view. And this is the model that we're going to export. I think everyone knows the model, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But what is important to understand and to know is like when you get a model, the first thing is you want to see like if it's an extruded model or you need to get the full volume, what we call a full volume. So in this case, you can see the first level, which is actually two levels. There is one here and the other one here are extruded, and this one on top is non-extruded. And you'll see why it's important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to export the first floor first, right? And then we talk about different concepts there, and then we move to the second floor. And this is something that I suggest you do for any model, even if it's a small model. I would do floor by floor, level by level, check and make sure the model makes sense. I have seen people to try to just export everything and then clean somewhere else. It won't work well, like unless the model is very clean, which almost never happens. You want to make sure you check it level by level. So this is how you would do it. I go here, click on export model, like all the way on the right, and a window pops up, right? The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to ignore everything and see like how I will have some issues or face some issues. So I'm not going to check anything. The only thing is boundary location is at wall center. That means the rooms that you get will be, right? You have the line in the middle of the wall instead of being at wall finish. Everything else, let's leave them to default. We go second step. So that was the settings. Here is the place that we deal with all the windows, the skylights, everything that we call apertures. And we tell to the plugin which items, which family types are the apertures, which ones you should consider to simplify as a window or a skylight in the model. Then step 3, we do the same thing for doors. So we tell the plugin which are the ones that we want to be parsed for door. And I imagine most of you on the call already are familiar with the concept of energy modeling. And in energy modeling, depending on how you model, some people want to keep the doors inside the model, some people don't. Depends like how you model or what's the type of building that you model. You may want to consider including them or not including them. That's why we have all this level of control for you. So for now, just don't select anything. Then I go here, and this is the place that you should see all the levels, right? And you should see number of rooms, spaces, and areas. So interestingly enough, I don't know if I have saved over my sample file or I opened the wrong one. I was expecting here not to see any rooms and then come back here and tell you, oh, you didn't check the phase. So what was the phase on your sample files? Was it also the working drawings?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My bad. We were supposed to get surprised. So surprise, surprise. So this is what sometimes happens. I ruined the surprise. Is people they open the file, right? They open it here. The project phase is the wrong phase, and they go all the way here, and we get an email of I don't see any of my rooms, because rooms will be 0. So the first thing is you want to make sure you are selecting the right phase, and you can select multiple phases. The reason for that is we have seen people dealing with projects that there is like an existing phase and there is an extension phase in Revit, and you want to include both of them in your model. So for this one, the working drawing is the right phase, but you can select multiple phase if you want in your model. For this one, we just select this one, right? So again, step 1, I go 2, 3, 4, and here I can see, oh, okay, level 1 has 6 rooms, level 2 has 8 rooms, and I'm going to use the rooms to export them. Just so you can select rooms, spaces, or areas per level. So if you have a model and rooms are not good, or you want to basically just have it as a single zone, you can just draw an area and use the area instead. In this model, we are going to use the rooms. Most of the times when you use the architectural model, you will be using the rooms for generating the analytical model. The first step is I'm going to click on this plus here and go to create floor plan. Right? So I click plus and create floor plan. Why do I do this? Because what it does, it basically creates a view in Revit that is set to give us all the things that we need to check the model. So what are the most important things? One is to make sure all the rooms are placed, because we're going to use rooms, right? If it's spaces, you make sure all the spaces are placed or all the areas are placed. That's one. The other one is you want to make sure you see all this what's called separation lines. And you'll see how these separation lines can be a problem. So people draw separation lines in Revit like a sketch most of the time from what I've seen. So you get a lot of issues, like a lot of small edges. You know, you see a lot of models that they have like a separation line right behind the window, which if you use the full model, then the window won't show up. And we will see that when we go to second floor. You know, there are cases like this that again, there are small edges. If you want to fix them, you can go fix them. For this floor, all the rooms are okay. And these separation lines are fine. I mean, I will show you how to deal with something like this, that you have a lot of small edges in model that typically in an energy model, you don't want to have, right? You just want this to be a simplified single line here. And then the other thing that you see is a problem here is this column. And this is a simple model with one. Usually models, you have like hundreds of them all over the place, and you have ducts and all those. So how to deal with this one too. Okay. Overall, that's how I check the model. Check all the rooms placed, make sure the separation lines are not a problem, and then get a sense of the columns and how they are going to create issues and holes in my model. Then the next thing that I do is I either go to an existing section or I just draw a section to get a sense of for the level to level height. So for this one, we already have a section or we have two. We can just right click on the section line and go to view. All right, again, what I did was I clicked on the section line and drop down, go to view, and it opens this building section view. So here I can check a few things, but the first thing I'm interested is to understand the extrusion heights for this level one. So you can see in this model what they have done, even though they have this level one living room, you see that? They put the room for the living room on level one. Why would people do that? Because in your plan view, it doesn't matter, right? You don't see that. So people just model in different ways. This will become an issue which we will fix. But just, you know, like the way architectural models are prepared to have a good, like, you know, for mostly for documentation. And we should accept that right away because, but it's an easy thing to fix. What we're trying to do with the Revit plugin is to give you the tools to just quickly fix those instead of thinking that there will be this ideal model that is ready to go. I have yet to see one, and I have seen like hundreds of models. So if you see one day, good for you. Like put it in your resume. Like, but it's not going to happen on a normal day-to-day work. I mean, it's going to get better if you talk to people and people know what they're doing, but you should start somewhere around here. Okay. So the first thing I'm interested is the level to level height. So in this one is 3,000 millimeters. And why am I interested in that? Because I'm going to use extruded mode for the geometry calculation. And I'm going to set this extrusion height here to help the plugin to understand how much it needs to extrude all the geometries that are all the rooms that are located in this level. Then I'm going to go next here, like to step 5. And in step 5, you will see the list of rooms that are available in that level. Why would we do this? Why would not just go and show them? Because there are a lot of times that either you want to debug a model or you're just interested in a few rooms. So this is the step that gives you the chance to just select the rooms that you want. So the menu selection is just like the standard selection, right? You can select one, you can hold down shift and select multiple. You can hold down control and then, you know, select, unselect the rest. It's just like how it works in Windows and Mac. So there's nothing that you need to know. There are 2 buttons here that are important. So one is select all and the other one is select none. Why is this select all important or control A? So one of the limitations on the Revit plugin right now that it's on top of our list to fix is this menu is not necessarily, it doesn't have the best performance. When you have so many rooms, and I'm talking about hundreds of rooms, then things can get slow if you want to scroll down and select by one. So these buttons here are going to be really helpful to quickly select all the rooms. So with that, let's go to step 6. And this is the place that it will go and parse all the rooms for you. No questions so far? Anyone crashed anything? No. Okay, good. So now that you have all of this, this is the step that you're going to have a quick check, quality check of the model. So one thing is you can see the height is set to 3000. Happy about that. So that's the number that I put in. Then you see no apertures indoors because we didn't select any. That's fine. To see the rooms visually, you press Control A or click here again to select all of them. And then you press on this I to reload preview. So what it does, it basically takes all these models that's parsed, and then it goes and generates the analytical model under the hood and tries to render it. Why is it important? Because you want to see all the issues in your model before you send it to simulation. Basically, the approach is things are going to go wrong. So let me help you see it before it becomes a problem later. So now we see everything extruded, 3000. Just to get like a little bit familiar with this viewer, and this is the same viewer that we have on our website in every other place. So you just learn it once and then use it everywhere. So if you start, if you try to pan, is it right click? I think they call it. I always get confused with which one is right and left. And if you want to orbit it, is the other one. So I think this is right click for pan, orbit. But then you will probably feel this is a little bit weird. It's not the same as how Rhino orbits. So the other option that you have is you can hold down Alt and it will orbit around for the whole geometry. So all these things that I said, if you forget, you can find it here in shortcuts. So I clicked here on the viewer, and then there are shortcuts here that tells you what you can do. Well, actually, you can hold down Shift 2 for pan, which I don't use myself. Then the other thing is there are stuff for the viewer. You can actually do a section box if you like. I know a lot of people like section boxes to see models, and it makes sense. It's helpful. So if you have a large model and you want to use a section box, you have it here in the viewer. Usually I do not use it as much, right? But for you guys to know, that's an option too. The other thing is here under model, the first one, the first tab, you have all the layers that you can turn on and off. Why is it important? Because it helps you to basically get a sense for the model and see everything is in place. There are layers like Rhino layers or Revit. I don't know what's the equivalent in Revit, but you can basically turn them on and off. Ceiling, there's no ceiling walls, and there is a wireframe view here that you can also turn on and off. We have room names, which is now you can't see because of this section box. So I just reset all. I go back to models, turn off the ceilings, and you can see all the room names, right? So this is a full-fledged viewer that you can use to kind of debug your model. Chris?
Yeah, Mustafa, there's just a question about, I think everyone or a number of people had their extrusion height set to, I guess, what was the default, which was 3,048. And I guess
Because
it's in menu. Yeah, if you go back to the menu where.
yeah, because you didn't set it here, then
Yeah.
I think Revit tries to figure it out, or the plugin tries to figure it out. Mine is apparently because I set it once. But if you write the exact value, I think it should take the exact value from here.
Yeah, so I guess I mean that was just the default that it was trying to figure out from the actual room geometry,
Right.
not because of your imperial units or anything like that. If you had an imperial, you'd see all the menus show up in feet, right, in feet and inches.
Yeah, it might. Again, I'm not a Revit expert on that, but as long as, and we will see when we have the second level on top of this. So if there are any issues, we will know at that time. Okay, so for now, if you put 3000, does it work? Gabriel and Hunter, like if you put even 3000.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, good. So put the value, and that's the good practice. Just always make sure it's you put the number in. So, okay, there are two issues here, at least that I can see. One is this column, you don't want it to be here, right? The other one is this room starts at the same level as the rest of the floor, but we know from the section that it actually should be minus 550. It just lower. It starts from here, goes all the way up. Make sense? So for this column, if you watched the video tutorials from last year, the way to do it is like this. So one way to get rid of this column is to go in the floor plan view, right? And the reason this is causing the problem is because this is room bounding. So if I go in pollination, back in pollination, there is a button here for show bounding and hide bounding. So when you click on it, it basically colors all the room bounding elements in your model. This is helpful when you have larger models and you want to understand why the room boundary is just stopping somewhere, right? So it quickly shows you all the room bounding elements. And you can see this is happening because this column is room bounding. So what you can do, you can select this, you can right click, and even select all instances if you have a larger model that has, you know, many of these columns in the entire project. And then you can click here and make sure it's not room bounding. And now it doesn't include this. So one thing that I wanted you to see is when I change the room bounding, we do not try to re-trigger this render. So you have to trigger it from here. It's possible to do, but it will be very heavy in large models. That's why we don't do it, right? So if you change room bounding, you can just click on this hide and show again to update the viewport. And you can see this is not room bounding anymore. That means if I come back here in my in the panel, pollination panel, and re-click here, not on this eye, but on this one, the reload geometry, the column should go away. Everyone is good? Did you follow? I don't see that many faces. I don't know. Like, you let me know if you have any issues.
Yeah, could you repeat that once more? I
Okay,
missed
sure.
what you did.
All right. Yeah, makes sense. So what I did here on level, I clicked on plus and open floor plan if you already have it, or you can just go here and find the floor plan. Select the column, right? And you will see the column is room bounding on the left side. If you don't see the menu, you might be on this one. You have to go on this properties menu to see it. And then just remove this not to be room bounding. And then you'll see it's now removed from the room. And now if you go here and click on this box here to reload geometry, you should get the geometry. So a couple of things that can go wrong. One is if you click on this reload preview, you will see the same preview. Like, you don't see that column removed. That's because reload preview only basically reloads any change that you have made here. Excuse me, and not the changes that you have made in Revit. If you make any changes in the Revit document, you have to click on reload geometry. So it basically goes and read all the changes from inside Revit. Why do we have these two options? Again, if your model is larger, you only want to reload from Revit when you make a change in Revit. You don't want every time to just reload everything. Could units be added to PO interface for clarification? In which area, Victor? Where? Oh, we can still hear you, but maybe you want to type it. Yeah, I think it will be helpful to add maybe even here to know where the units are. But yes, we don't have them right now. So this thing that we added the column here, it basically fixed our problem. But if you do this with a model that other people are also using, you're now close to getting fired by your BIM manager. Why? You just changed something that you might have not changed. If other people are using this room to report something, or they have you know, they have it in their views and everything, and you remove this column, you basically changed all that. So what we have seen so far is in most cases, you basically take an off, like the idea is in Revit, like multiple people are working together, but it feels like what we have seen so far is people really don't collaborate on the Revit model. Mostly they coordinate, right? So you basically have your own version of copy of Revit, and this should be fine. But sometimes it's not. And if it's not fine, let me go back and redo that. If you don't own it, or if this column is in a linked model, so you cannot edit it as easy as I did, right? You don't have access to linked model. There is a better way to deal with this. So I'm going to make this room bounding again. So you'll see it's back. And now if I reload this preview, you'll see the column is back here. Here we go. So to remove this, now there is a better way of doing that. And the better way is you go to step 1. I go back to step 1 here on settings, and there is a settings for minimum hole area. So it basically asks you to put a value, and if the hole is smaller than that value, then it will ignore it. So in this, for a square meter, so for example, I say anything that's smaller than 1 square meter, then I don't want to see them in my model. Just remove it, right? And these columns, because they are smaller than 1 square meter, it will be removed. So let's go back. And of course, I didn't calculate the area, so I hope I'm gonna get lucky. Let's see. I usually put 2 to make sure like it's large enough. Yeah. So you see what happened? It is still room bounding in Revit, but it is fixed in my analytical model that I have. It's basically automatically removed. So these are the routines that we call like fixing the model without changing the Revit model. And they are useful because, again, of all the ownership challenges. And also sometimes people just don't know how to deal with Revit and they don't want to touch Revit. Any questions so far? No? Okay.
Mustafa,
Yes.
I had a question. Would this be the same case if you were to do this, use spaces rather than rooms as well, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The spaces, rooms, areas, they're all basically we treat them the same as source of geometry. Okay, the next issue that we have is this thing here, right? It starts here instead of starting on the right level. So to fix this, simply you have to fix the Revit model. So what you do, you can just go here. I mean, there are better ways of doing this. For example, you can copy it to the right level and all those. But what I would do is just go select the room. And this is a good example to show if Revit gets confused and you can't select, you just keep pressing Tab until Revit selects the right one. Then just take this and bring it all the way down. And you should be all good to go, right? And the reason that it stops here and it stops there is because those elements are room bounding. Again, if I click, you will see this is room bounding and this is room bounding. Now, if you go back and reload geometry, you see this is now set to -600, the base offset. I mean, technically the right value is -550. I know it from here. But what I wanted to show is it doesn't matter because it's room bounding. Element here stops the room. That's what you shoot for. Then Revit makes the decision based on the room bounding elements. Here we go. So this is also good. We got this. Then there is no error right now in the model necessarily, but there is something that bothering me a lot, which is all these small things that are going back, right? This small thing here. I'll talk about this later on how to fix it, but for now we just leave it as they are. We can fix all of them. So far, what we have, it gives us all the room names, all the room numbers, all the heights that they have. And this is already the thing that people usually, you do a 2D and then you try to extrude them in the other software and type in all the names. So that one is all solved. I hope you never do that again in your life if you have been doing it. But now, so this is not great, right? Like we want, where are the windows and all the apertures? So the next step, I'm going to go back to step 2 and try adding this windows to this model. Anyone has any questions? No, so far?
How'd you edit the offset again, Mustafa? Just sorry, I kind of missed that one.
No, it's all good. So I went in section really, and what I did, I dragged this down.
Ah, I
I
see. Okay.
drag this down. But what you can do, you can also go here, select the room, and change this base offset to -550,
Yep.
right? Yes, and it just adjusts it for you. This is like Revit room properties in Revit. And for everything that I do in Revit, probably there's a better way of doing it. I don't know. So if you know there's a better way, just do that. I just know something that works for us, right? So, okay, now I have the rooms. Let's go to apertures, step 2. So I click back to step 2. So one thing that you might have noticed is when I want to go back, I can click. When I want to go forward, I can only do this forward, backward, forward, like I have to click here. The reason for that is you can go back and we have no issue with that because we don't have to recalculate the geometry. But when you go forward, every time that you go here in step 6, we have to make sure that we reparse all the changes, right? That's why you cannot basically click here and go to step 8 because every step we have to know the changes to be able to parse the changes. So I go back to level 2 by clicking on 2 here. So the next thing that I do is similar to how for level, I basically clicked and created a floor plan, and then I try to check how it looks like. For Windows, we do the same thing. So I go usually to 3D view, right? And then I go here and I select the windows and curtain wall panels one by one and right click on them and click on select all to see where are they in my model, right? And I know you will not do this with your models. You will come in and you'll do this, select everything and then go and render and you see a lot of apertures on top of each other and like things look weird. Then come back here and fix it. It's like you spend a little bit of time here, but it just pays back for the rest of the project. Because if you clean up these windows and make sure you select the right curtain walls, you already saw we have the room geometry, then you get the apertures and you're like 90% there, just done, right? So spend some time here. I know it's a little bit painful the first time that you want to do it, but it's not that hard. So that was all the windows. The other one is the skylight. If I do select all here, it should select these 2 skylights for me, right? And then we have the panels here. I right click and select all. So you see all of this are curtain wall panels basically that they modeled it. So what I'm going to do, because I'm only working on the first floor for now, I'm going to only select the window and the curtain wall panel and go all the way and see how it looks like. So let's go here, select this window and then hold down control and select system panel. And next, no doors, level 1. And now you'll see there are 20 apertures for kitchen and there are 14 for living room and 3 for hall. Do you see that? The same thing, press Control A and click on preview. By now you should know how to do that yourself. Good. Okay, great. So one thing that you might notice, I mean, first of all, it looks good. So great. When we started, it used to take us like an hour to do this. But now like it's really like 2 minutes. Like you go click, click, select them, and everything should show up correct. So one thing that you might have noticed is if I zoom in, for curtain walls, we take the panel. So the frame is not included, right? But if you check the windows, you see they're just touching each other. So it's not only the window, the glass part of it, but it also includes the frame. Let me go in 3D and you'll see it. So here, it's only the curtain wall panels. And that's what we do for all the curtain walls, right? You can say which curtain wall panels you want to be exported. That means you can have a curtain wall and one of the panels here can be solid and that won't be exported, right? So this curtain wall panel. Do they have different types in this model? They don't. So I wanted to change it to solid, so that's too much now. Then this won't be exported. So because you will get people do so many things with curtain walls, right? Sometimes things that they shouldn't be even doing. But in this case, as long as you select the curtain wall panel, it will be exported. But for Windows, you see like the frame was also included. Otherwise, if it was only the glass, it should have just stayed inside, right? So if you are, and again, this comes to like how you want to prepare your model. Some people think this is fine. You know, some people want only the glass and just then they want to change the U value to include the frame. You know, some people do this and then add the frame somewhere else. You know, all this things are options. But what I'm going to show you is you have the option. So if I go back to step 2, window, you see there is this dot, dot, dot one is black instead of white. That means like there are layers here. So I can click. And then when I click, I can see there are different materials here. Like there is glass clear glazing, there is aluminum, and there is this wood part. So usually what you want, if people named it correctly, you want the glass, right? You can go, of course, and check in Revit to make sure everything is set the way that it should be set. So if I check this, you can see the frame is aluminum, right? The glass is glass. And then you have the other materials that are set here, like you have aluminum for 3 of them, and then you have the wood. And these are the things that you see here in the menu. So, I mean, we think you should be able to remove this and remove this, right? I just removed both aluminum and the wood one. And then I'm going again, go back and select, hold down control and select system panel and this window and go and try to see what happens. So select everything. Oops, sorry. So if I select everything and render it, and you can already see the problem. Do you see the problem here without rendering? No, let me see. If I render this, and I hope I didn't share the wrong sample file with you that this is already fixed. No, it's not. So I'm missing all those pieces of glass for window. Makes sense? So the leaving, which had like 30 something apertures, now only has 7. So we know this has something to do with the material that we selected, because if I go back here and bring back all the materials that we had, and now I'm only going to select single window and I'm going to only focus on this room. You don't have to do this. I'm just going quickly just to show you. On living, you'll see if I do that, all the apertures are back. So it has to do something with the material, right, that I changed. So what's really happening here is if you go here and check this Revit model, do you see even like the color of glass for this one is slightly different from the color of glass for the other ones? That's why now if I select this and right click and select all instances in the entire project, you'll see what happens is this glass material is not set the same for all the instances in the model. So what's happening is for this one, they actually set the glass material, but for everything else, it is set to be for by category. And when it's by category, we cannot filter it because we don't know what's the material for by category, right? So what you need to do if you want to do this filtering is just right click, select all instances visible in view, or entire project, actually. Let's do entire project. And then click inside this. There's ... inside glass, and set this to the same material. So we just make sure everything is set to the same glass. And then if I just go down, this is glass clear glazing is the one that we are looking for. I mean, technically you can select any glass, it should work. It doesn't really matter. And then I press OK. And now you see even the color changed for all of them. So if I select one of them just to randomly check, you see like the glass is set glass clear glazing. That means now if I go back here, go back to step 2 and do what I did, just only select glass clear and go here and go here and go here. And redo this. Oh, I'm rendering all the rooms. I should have only do the living probably, but now you'll see that I'm only getting the glass and all this frame area is left. And because I set the material correctly now, I see all the pieces of the glass that I need to see. Any questions? Do you want me to show it again? No? Okay, and you might be asking yourself why he is spending so much time showing, like, why does it even matter? Just like do the whole glass. Because in real world, I wish it was as simple as this, but it's not, right? So these are 2 examples of real world things that we saw in the projects that people work with. And it's not even only the material, it's that you might have different pieces of glass modeled, right, in the same window, and you want to work with that. So if you want to work with that, then you have to check the family. And we have introduced recently 3 different options for parsing. So one is the single panel, which is the one that we use today for this, and it's totally fine. So what single panel does, it tries to basically translate the whole window to a single panel, right? Then you have multi-panel, which tries to create one panel per piece of glass or per piece of material that you have. And then you have the bounding box. So why you need bounding box? Because sometimes editing a family can take a lot of time and it doesn't worth it. So this is how it looks like. So for that model, if I try to do single panel, this is what I get. Because one thing that you don't see in this view is the size of this glass that they made is different from the size of this glass. Why? I don't know, because that's how they modeled it. You expect them to be the same. But then it tries to find the line around it, and you see you get this weird shape of, not non-rectangular window. Then if you change it to bounding box, this is fixed. But if you want to be really accurate, then you need this multi-panel configuration. So it does it something like this. Make sense? This is very recent. We didn't even make the official announcement, but we'll do more videos on this. And again, this is another one that we get a lot. Like a lot of people do this models that they have doors with like so many things in them. And one way is to go and like edit all these materials and try to just, or hide them and edit this. But really all you want is that door, right? So you can basically not clean anything and you get this, or you can just select bounding box and you get this. And again, you have the options. Like our basically thinking is always is to give you option to make your decision based on how you want to deal with the model. Any questions here? So okay, so again, review the things. Room, extrude. We know room is space or areas. We check those. We check the columns, and we can use either minimum whole area, or we can make them not to be room bounding. Then we talked about the apertures and the difference between windows and curtain walls. So for curtain walls, it's curtain wall panel. For windows, you either take everything or you can filter by material. And we also talked about adjusting this room, which was supposed to be in a different level. So we said that. So now we have all this. Let's go back here to step 2, select the single window and select system panel. Go next, next, next. And we should have our first floor almost ready to go. So now you see all the windows are where they're supposed to be, right? The height is set. But one thing that you would notice is the doors are missing. These two are missing here, right? If I go in this 3D model here, you see that there is a door here and there is another one here, and both of them are missing from the model. So these are the doors that you want to model as glass because they're like or apertures in our world, right? Because they're all glass doors. So if I go back here, I have to do the exact same thing that I did for Windows, but this time for door. So I can either select it from here, or I can go here and try to select the door, and I can see this is curtain wall double glass, right? So I go here and I select curtain wall double glass, right? And then I click here and make it ease glass. So when I do ease glass, it will be exported as an aperture. If I don't do that, it will be a door. And then I go next. And now you saw like this number bumped to 16 here. So if I render it, you should be able that the doors are also here. Any questions? No one has any issues. This is just too good to be true. Okay. If you have questions, you can type them there. But great, like my lucky day. Happy Friday. Doesn't happen normally. So, but okay. So if you have that, I want to talk a bit about a couple of options that we have here that we didn't talk about. If you see, there are two columns at the end. One is ground contact, and the other one is top exposed. So when we export the model, Revit plugin does its best to figure out what faces are touching ground and what faces are exposed, are just, they're not sealing their roofs, right? If I go to materials, you will see here that there are no roofs, right? It says ceiling and interior floors because it was not able to understand that this is touching ground. And this one in particular is a roof. So this is something that you have to help the model by just selecting it. So I select the leaving and say this is top exposed. And then I press Control A and make sure it understands everything is ground contact. And now you see that I made this change. You see this red line around here, which basically says something has changed. So you can click on this I this time, right? Because I didn't make any changes in the Revit model. I made changes in Pollination side of things for the metadata. And now we see two things changed here. One is this is now has a different color, right? This is set to exterior roof, right? This is because I said this is top exposed. And this one's now, they're floors. They're not interior floors anymore. And this is going to be more important if you are exporting this model. Either you want to run energy simulation directly from inside Revit, or you're exporting it to OpenStudio or Energy Plus, where this is important. Like if you do IES VE, if you do export to IES VE, like this doesn't really matter because we just do all the geometry there, and then IES VE figures that out. For export to eQuest, this is also important. You want to make sure to set it correctly. There's just one more thing here that we need to kind of know about. It's not necessarily a problem, but if you use this model for an energy model, right? If I click here and turn off the roof and ceilings, these walls here in between, they should be interior walls. But right now, everything is just set to wall. Again, this is something that you can do in other software if you want to do solve adjacency there, but you also have the option to do it here. So if I click on this settings, and I know these things shouldn't be hidden in the settings that you have to click. That's something on our UI side that we have to improve. But for now, they are just hidden here because we couldn't figure out our UI. That's on me. But there is an option here for solve adjacency. So we give you right now 3, probably like in the next release, we remove wall only because we didn't see that many use cases for. So you either can solve adjacency or you cannot solve adjacency. So now if I set the solve adjacency to full mode and click on apply the changes that I made, you will see that it will take a bit longer for the model to show up. Because this time it's not only calculates the geometry, but it also tries to solve the adjacency. And now if I click on this layers here, you will see there is a new layer here for interior walls. And now it also set all those to roof. So when you do all the solve adjacency, it basically tried to find another face next to this face, and it saw, oh, there is no face. So it should be facing outdoors. You see that here? These are the ones that I set original to interior ceilings. So why am I showing you this? Because we have been very, very, very careful for people to tell when is a good time to run energy simulation from inside Revit and feel like you can rely on it. And this solve adjacency is a very important part of it. So right now in the public release that we have, the solve adjacency is only working for the extruded mode. In a matter of weeks, we will have the one that is for the full 3D model. And we are getting closer and closer to confidently tell people just run energy simulation from inside Revit and you should be good because the model is reliable, right? That's why I'm showing it, even though I'm not going to run energy simulation necessarily during this workshop. I want you to know that these are the things that you want to check if you really want to run an energy model from inside Revit and you want to rely on the results. So with that, I think like we had everything that we wanted to do in the first floor. We have the what is it? We have the rooms. We had the apertures. I talked about solve adjacency. I talked about materials. So everything for level 1 is done. Do you think you can go and do level 2 on your own? Just give it a try, and I'm going to answer questions. So I did level 1. You guys go back here, or it's the 4, and you can hold down Control to select level 2. But remember, before you have to click plus, create floor plan, check things, and then see what you do with the model. And then I give you 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and then I'll do it for you. So in these 3 minutes, I can answer, is there an option to undo within PO interface? Well, you can just deselect and that's undo. So if you don't want solve adjacency anymore, you basically set this to none and apply that, and that will be, that should be undo. Let me select all the rooms. That's question 1. When you do solve adjacencies and it turns ceiling into roofs, does that affect energy model? Yes, it does. Since there is level kitchen dinner, is it floor or ceiling? There is a level above. Yes, so just when you add the second floor, oh, I made a mistake and I selected the second floor. I gave it away. So sorry, go back here. When we add the second floor and you do full solve adjacency, it should recognize that there is a kitchen on top, so it should set it to ceilings. So that will be resolved. This time it just set it to floor because I only solved adjacency for the first floor, right? It had no idea about the rest of the geometry. So
Can I ask a quick question as well?
sure.
Just out of curiosity, so if we're working in sort of an iterative manner, right? So let's say a month later, I move around some interior walls or I add some apertures. Is there a way to kind of save most of the steps so that I don't have to redo it from scratch? Or how does that work?
Yes, and this is the place that you're getting me to the. You can do that in the Rhino plugin. So in the Rhino plugin, we have a workflow for technically merging models. So you can have your current model. It's like a pull request in GitHub, right? You just send a new one. It compares the rooms and it says this room has changed. This room is updated. So if you want, you can say only update the geometry of this room. So you keep all the other work that you have done. And the other thing is for all the selection of apertures and doors and all that, they're almost always reusable in the same Revit model in most cases. But yes, we have that. You cannot do it in Revit, but you can do it in Rhino. And interestingly enough, we haven't seen that many people using it because what really happens in real world is people do not try to edit rooms. They just delete rooms and they add a new one. So all those identifiers that you want to have to match them, they're all gone. Of course, we can do more like, try to figure out what's on top of what, but it hasn't been enough. There hasn't been enough request for it, That's what initially we thought like, oh, that will be something that people love, but it looks good on the paper. We haven't seen that many use cases. I think as the plugins gets better, I think maybe we get at the time that people can think more fancy. Right now, it's basically you get this model, just make a model that runs, and thank God, we're still cutting the time from weeks to days. Everyone's just like, this is great, But we'll get there. I mean, I hope we'll get there. Okay, what happened with level 2? Anyone who was able to finish level 2 on their own and doing it for the first time? No. You see, like when I do it, it works. When you do it, it doesn't. That kind of thing. So that's kind of like the goal of this one. And you'll see, I think, as I said, by the end of this workshop, I want you to be confident that you can deal with a model when we do the advanced one yourself. So the reason I told you to do level 2 on yourself, because I guess most of us, I mean, that's how our brain works, right? So it worked for level 1, it should work for level 2. I do level 2, I go here, and then I check. So in level 2, there are 2 issues. One is there is one room missing here, right? Or it's a shaft kind of missing. And the other one is there is one line behind this wall that is a problem or might be a problem. We'll see. So if your mode is extruded, this is fine. But because this geometry of second floor is not extruded, this will be a problem. So let me go and try to export this second floor. And I'm going to use the extruded floor mode for now, right? I'm going to write a large number here, 6,000. I know this is wrong. You don't have to do this. I'm just doing it to show you what happens. I go next. It selects all the rooms by default. I go here, select everything, and then try to preview. One thing for you to notice, what I didn't do was I didn't select level 1 and level 2 at the same time when I'm debugging, right? I'll just select one level at a time. So you'll see it gets exported, right? The apertures are mostly fine. This is missing that we knew it was missing. And here, even though I had a separation line in the model, the windows are coming in correctly, right? If I go in the 3D mode and show it to you, so this and this, they both came in as expected correctly, even though there was a separation line behind it. But what we realized quickly is this is not an extruded model, right? This is a full volume model. So we want to go back here and make it volumetric, right? We want to go back in level 4 and change this methodology for instead of extruded floor to be full volume. So why did I show you this? Because there are cases, and I have helped several cases like this, that if you want to get that full volume thing to really work, you have to spend hours going like make sure all the room bounding ceilings are removed, make sure like the roofs are correct in Revit, which usually is not. In this model, it's easy, we'll fix it. But in real life, you get models that are really hard to fix. So what I would do in those kind of cases is I'll use the extruded mode. Then I go in the next step that you add context shade. And I take the roof geometry and add it as a shade. If I go here, add from selection, then you'll see that if I do the preview, oh, and the rooms didn't show up, but the shade will be in the model. What I do, I really take this model to Rhino, and then I trim. Basically, I trim all the faces of the roof using this face, and in Rhino, I do a cap, and then I have everything done, right? And you might be thinking, okay, if there is such a workflow, why don't you just do it in Revit for us? And the answer is we will. So one of the things that we are working on is basically if your walls are all extruded, we kind of call it like 2.5D instead of 3D, which is most of Revit models. You can still use the extruded mode, and we will figure out the full volumetric things for you. Why it's important? Because of this. Let's go and try to export the full volume. And keep in mind, this is a very simple model. So if I do full volume, you see this extrusion height is removed because now it's full volume. It tries to find the full 3D geometry for us. And now it selected everything. So let me select and preview. And you'll see almost everything looks as expected. Do you get this on your end too? You're following? Okay. So the problems that we have, one is this is missing. So we know that. The other one is those windows are gone. The reason they're gone, because when we do full volume, we really try to go and do it element by element in Revit, right? So we get this element here, which is this wall, if we can get to it, and then we try to find all the windows inside that wall. But because of this separation line here, we never see this wall behind it, right? The room stops at this separation line. So you see a lot of these models, and I love it because when I see them, just like, why did they put a separation line? And then you just delete it. And you think, okay, it's great. Like I just deleted it, and these are all room bounding, and everything stopped there. And then you go back and re-render the thing. So I just go here and re-click here. This is why. So the windows are here now. There is a leak. And you'll see a lot of these leaks, even for the first floor. If I wouldn't do like extruded mode for that living room, there was a leak. There are places that leaks like this happens. And if I go in section in the other section, so if I go to floor plan and select this section here, go to view, you don't have to do this again. Like I'm just doing it to show you. You see like in Revit, this comes here, this element stops here, this wall stops here. For some reason, Revit thinks, okay, let's go. You know, like, why would I stop here? Again, like we can all sit here and complain and say Revit this and that. But reality is, for most of Revit users, when they do documentation, this doesn't matter. If it mattered, at least they would have fixed it in their sample model. They didn't do that, right? And that's the reality. I just want you to get comfortable with how the reality is. You can start talking to the people who you get model from and just explain a little bit, but it takes time for them to understand. So when you see cases like this, you have to go and fix them, right? So how do I fix this? The way to fix this is, the easiest way is go in 3D view, go in top view, right? Then select the room here and just drag this, click on this small arrow and drag it a little bit forward. As long as it just has, it goes over that wall, Revit will take care of the rest. So if I now go back to that section that I had, now you see the room stops here. And if I go back here and click on this boxy thing to reload geometry, now everything looks as expected. Questions?
Can you walk through that one more time?
Sure. So let's go Control Z. The problem happened here. So what really happens is when I did the volumetric option, I see this room geometry shows like this, and this is because this is leaking all the way, right? This is because this roof and these walls are not necessarily really touching, and that's happened. So to do that, I have to edit the outline of the roof. I went to a 3D view, clicked on top, and then I just dragged this from here to here. It depends on type of the roof. So if you have a horizontal roof, you have to click here and edit boundary or edit profile. That comes up and then you edit that. So now that they are touching, it stops here and it's now you have the full 3D geometry. So if I go here and render it, it should be fixed. Questions? And again, this is a very simple model, so this kind of fixing is easy. For larger models, I hope like as soon as we do that X2.5D, so we support this kind of roofs in extruded mode, I think like things should be much easier. And we have the whole base thing. We have to expose it in Revit and then of course test it in with several models to make sure we will get there. But we will get there. It's not something that we cannot solve.
Just
That
a
should
quick
even
question.
remove this editing. Go ahead.
So I did the roof modifications, but I don't see the windows. Is there, maybe I missed a step on the windows?
So do you still have the single window and the system panel selected in step 2?
Yes, I have that. Yeah.
Okay, if you have them selected, then go next, and next here. And when it parses things, do you see the number of apertures here?
13,116.
You see them?
I see 13,113 entry
Okay,
hall.
I mean, okay, that's, I mean, like as long as you see aperture, so you have them. So if you select
Yeah.
them and then render them, they should show up.
I think
guess
I
I'm
also have
missing-
3 for the entry hall.
You have 3 for the entry hall. That might be because of the door. Did you select the door here? So if I do select none and go here, let's see what happens. Can I get to which one is the entry hall? Select. Oh, I wanted to see it in the plan. Yeah, so you should have one here for door. There are 2 doors on 2 sides, and then there are. Oh, did you remove this separation line?
Oh, maybe that was it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
probably.
control Z, so
Yeah, Control Z, yeah. Did
okay.
you remove that separation line? Yes, that's why. Good. This is feeling like a real world workshop.
Wait, so do we need to remove that separation line or no?
Yes, because if you
Okay,
don't, these
gotcha.
windows will be missing.
Gotcha.
Again, like when we have the extruded mode, so you don't have to go full volume, you don't in the future, in the near future, but right now you have to. Yes, thank you, Ibrahim. You have to make sure remove the separation line.
I'm getting that problem too, where windows aren't showing up on the whole like long side face, you know.
So
But
do
it
you
says
have,
the apertures, it says there's
Mhm.
11 apertures.
Which one? Which room?
11 in the master bedroom.
Master bedroom. I think that's because you're missing the door, because there is one door here in master bedroom. So if I go level 3, oh, you have without
Yeah,
that, even though you have that.
I have that. Yeah, it looks like yours, but it says 11. But then on the sidewall, none of those windows are showing up for me, even though they're counted, like in the bathroom.
Interesting. So do you have system panel also selected here? One of the other things I
Yes.
really want to change in our UI is like selection should be different from modification. So let's try this. Let's try all 3 for now, because now like we have everything set. So select your window, skylight, system panel, go back here, select the curtain wall, and maybe you can even select the entrance door, because if I check the entrance door here in 3D, go here just to show it to you. It is on the back there. So I make this wireframe so we can see it. Too many windows and tabs. So if I right click and select all, this is the entrance door there. It's a small one here in the model. So if you want, you can select that too. And then let's see what happens. And then we can check probably. So am I going to make this is glass too? So I'm going to select both doors, go next. And I'm going to select both levels here, level 1 and level 2. Go next. And now we should get the whole model. Let's see if when you do this, if your numbers matches mine. And then if it doesn't, does it match mine?
I'm still not getting windows on that second floor
Okay.
on that long face, but
And
maybe.
I can help you during the break with that.
Okay.
Check that. So yeah, this is and that's the entrance door that we added here and here. Those are the doors. So we have everything. We have one missing room here. I'm going to show you how to. Yes.
Sorry, could you show just one more time the context shading selections?
Context shading, I will show it in the next step.
Okay.
I'll show you how to do that. But for now, any questions about anything here so far? I just wanted to show one more thing here that has been bothering me from the start. I know you'll see it's even worse than what we think. So we have all these small things, right? And then you have this here too. So if you check between the 2 floors, they don't really match, right? So this will be set as like exterior outdoor if you do solve adjacency. This is the same here, right? So again, this is one of those things that technically you can go and fix in your Revit model. You can start moving the rooms, try to align everything. But if you do that, people are going to get mad, right? Because you're changing their design model. You don't want to do that. This is not what's supposed to do. So for doing that, we have another concept, which is called alignment. Like basically you just align it to align, right? And this is something that you can do in Rhino much, much, much better. And if you're coming to the workshop in the afternoon, we'll show that. But you can also do it in Revit. So the way to do it in Revit, I'm going to close this window for now. Let's close it. We'll go through the whole process again. Is you can basically draw lines in plan and tell the Revit plugin that use this line, and anything which is within a distance from that line should be aligned to that line. So what I want to do, I want to align the first floor to the second floor. So I'm going to go in level 2 plan. And then I'm going to draw a model line, which you can find if you go under architecture here, model line. I just draw a line. You can also, there are different ways in Revit to do that. I never feel comfortable using anything else. So I just use the model line. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a line and make sure my line is aligned with this line that we have here. So it should be in the center where the line is. Let me, if I did it correctly, actually, it should be aligned with the center of wall here. And there is this command in Revit for align, AL, that does that for you. So you can say, and I always forget which one should I select first. Okay, I did it wrong. So you select this one and align it and align that one to it, right? So draw the line and then make sure you align it with this middle of the wall where your rooms are. So it's here. If you want, if you know Revit and you feel comfortable, you can just also draw another line here. I'm not going to do it because, I mean, the way the workshop, I don't want people to get confused for drawing a line. So now we have to, and this is part of the how Pollination uses these alignment lines. Again, this is an area that I think we can improve a lot. But for now, what you need to do, you can select this line, go under Manage. There is Selection tab here and select Edit. And create a new selection filter and add this line to it. So what we need you to create all these alignment lines that you have, and it can be as many as you want, as a selection filter. That's how we realize this is an alignment that we can use in Pollination. So I click here on New. I name it for level 1 alignment, because even though I drew it in second level, I want to apply it to first level. And then I'm going to use current selection because I already have it selected to create this level 1 alignment. Again, I drew a model line. I selected it. I went under Manage, Selection, Edit, and then I created a selection filter that only has that line in it. And one of the things that usually happens is they get lost in your model. That's why now we have under Pollination panel, there is a Manage Alignment Selections that you can click on, and then you can see the list and you select them and click on Preview so you can see where they are in your model. And you can also double check to make sure all of them are part of your selection. Does it make sense? So in this case, I have only one. Any questions? You're good with this? Okay, this is the last step and we will have a break. So you can get some tea, coffee. Last step, and I still missing this room, but that's a quick one. So now if I go back to my export model workflow, and you know what, this is a good time to save my file. Do that. So I can share with you 001. So if I go click on export model, everything that I have done before selected should be there. Apparently not. I don't know why. It should have been there. Okay, this. Select the glass here. So I'm going to select this and this. I'm going to select the panel. I go next. Select these two doors and make them east glass. And I go next. Levels are at least still selected and stayed the same. Good. I go next here, and you'll see that nothing here is going to change, right? Like, so I'm just checking the model as it was. So floor 1, level 1, and level 2. And this time I think is the first time that I selected the skylights, so they should show up too. And everything else should stay as is. So one thing or two things that I have to mention here, I will come back to them in the advanced model too, is there are buttons here that we will talk about, let's not forget. And there is one small thing here that we added. So if you have any issues and you want to see what happens, this is your log file. You can click here and it will open the log file. So you can see like everything that happens. If there are any errors, you can also see for the tech savvy ones, you can see all the commands that we run under the hood. So if you're interested to better understand the whole workflow, they're all available. We log them intentionally so you can see and educate yourself if you're interested. But now going back to the issue that we were trying to solve, you see this thing, we have still this gap. So to solve that, I can go to step 4 and select only level 1, because as you can see, the alignment doesn't work for the full volume option. So I go to level 1, click on this select under the align command, column, sorry, and then select this level 1 alignment and press OK. So now you can see here, one alignment is selected. Yes? Okay. Now that's selected. Let me select level 1 and level 2. Go next, next. And the same thing, select everything and do preview. This time you'll see it takes a bit longer, because what happens is it's not only generating the initial model, but then it's also going through that alignment routine to align all those edges within the tolerance. But as you might see, it probably won't work. Anyone knows why? Can you guess? The reason is, again, our UI is really bad right now. Under settings, there is an alignment distance too. So not only I have to tell align to this, but I also have to tell like what is the distance that I want to align to. So I'm going to put around 200 millimeters, which is 20 centimeters. That means any wall or window, any geometry that is within 20 centimeters of this, align them, right? So now that I selected this, I can do apply. And this time it should really work. Now you see it's clean. And you don't have that anymore. Make sense? Next step, I'm going to show you how to add shades. This room is missing, but I assume everyone knows how to put a room in. And that's something I wanted you to try. But if you don't, let me just, because of time, I'm just going to do it myself quickly. That could have been a good thing to try on your own. But the way to do it is you either do RM or you go under architecture, click on room, place your room here, and click on modify, rename it to shaft or something like that. And then what you will see is happening is if I go not do anything else and try re-render this, reload this. You will see that the room is there, but it stays, or is it? Oh, I didn't select it, sorry. I had to go back to here. So now the shaft is added. I had to go back one level, one step to step 5. So I get the shaft. And then now that it's selected, you see it's here, but you see it's giving you a warning, right? It says face has no surface aligned or surface type assigned, sorry. The reason it does that, because when you place a room in Revit, for some reason that I have no idea why, it basically sets a default height that's not usually tall enough, right? It stays in the middle. And the Revit plugin doesn't know that, how to figure that out. So what you need to do is just, it's very similar to what we did with the other room that we had to drag it down. This time you have to drag it up. You see the room is there. It's basically halfway there. So if I go here and turn off the walls and maybe the roofs, so you see that it is created here, is shaft, but it stops here. So to fix that, the easiest way is to go either do the same thing that it's happening for all the other rooms. So you can change this limit offset to be 6,500. You can also do this from inside Revit, right? Or you can go and in the section pull it up. Doesn't matter, as long as you just edit the geometry of the room so it goes all the way up. And apparently this thing that I did, I had to apply, didn't work out. So yeah, what I like to do, and I don't again understand why Revit doesn't do that, is I think every level should go. So this upper limit shouldn't be the same level, right? It should be the next level. And then this offset can be 0 then. So I'm going to change all this, or change this, sorry, this one for this level to be roof line. And now if I select this and I do apply, so you have to make sure to do apply when you make a change like this. That should fix it for us. Now you see the room is here. Makes sense. Again, this is a Revit thing, not necessarily a pollination thing. You just have, if you do full volume, you have to make sure the volume is correct. Last step in the process is adding context shade. So far, we dealt with all the geometry of the rooms. But one of the other things that's painful to model is if you want to go and model every single shade geometry that you have for your model. So what you can do is technically you can almost select anything and everything in Revit. And as long as the geometry is not very complicated, the Revit plugin should take care of it as adding them as shade. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select a few of these faces here, right? I'm going to select this, select this. In 3D view, you can select it in plan, doesn't matter, wherever you want to select. You can also select these trees just to get a sense of how it works differently. So a couple of this, and I'm going even to select this one as an example. Then when you have all this selected in Revit, you can come back here and click on plus and click as add shades from selection. So it basically takes all the current selection of Revit and then it adds it as shades here. Similar to what we did in rooms, you can select all of them and visualize them before exporting to make sure things are set as expected, right? So now you can see how they have been exported. For trees, because we cannot get the real geometry, we basically use the bounding box. For the other geometries that we can get the real geometry, we really try to get the geometry. Here, one thing that I would check always is if you have something like this, and it's adding 116 faces to your model, if you're using this for energy modeling, you better not include it, right? You can always right click here and remove it from your selection, right? So now I have all these faces here. And then there is a concept of detached that only matters if you're exporting this to IES VE. So in IES VE, there are different types of shades. If you're doing it for OpenStudio, or if you're exporting it as HBJSON to go to Rhino, or even if you directly go to IDF Energy Plus, then this doesn't really matter if it's detached or not. So now I go next. Here is the place that you can add sensor grids if you want to run daylight studies.
Mustafa, maybe I will just add the attached affects just the reflectance in Energy Plus OpenStudio, the default reflectance. If you don't set it to anything else, so just context is 20% reflective, and building shade is I think it was I think it was 35.
Okay, good to know.
But yeah, continue.
Thank you. Then the next step is setting sensor grids, if you want to run daylight studies, then we can probably address this when we go to the advanced model, if anyone wants to run a study. So we run like something that's large enough. And then finally, here is the place that you can set up construction set, program types, and HVAC if you want to run a simulation. I'm not going to cover them in these workshops, but there are video tutorials that shows you how to do all those stuff. And here is your export options that if you want to go Honeybee, GBXML, Energy Plus, OpenStudio, IES VE, eQuest, any of this format, you can do that. And we have videos that shows best practices for each of them. But if anyone has any questions, I can answer. For now, I'm just going to do a Honeybee model and export it to, where is it? Or import it to Rhino. So this is HPJSON. So you can see how the model comes in. Do you have any questions? So if you want to use this workflow of going from Revit to Rhino, our suggestion is always to use HPJSON format. Of course, you can use other format, but HPJSON is the one that keeps all the data that you want. Okay, here is Rhino. Or is it? Where is Rhino? Here is Rhino. I'm going to open the file that I just saved. AECtech. Here. Open, and I'm not going to run validation yet. So this is the model that we exported. And you see all the room names are in, the geometry is here, levels are here, and we didn't assign anything here. It just did some default stuff, but the rest should be exported with no issues. I mean, in the afternoon, for people who come, like we deal with a sample, a model like this, and how to check more and fix some stuff in a model that's not valid. But that's basically is all that I wanted to show you for the Revit sample model. I even covered some of the stuff that I wanted to really cover in the advanced model, but I think that's fine. That will save us some time there. So just to review the things that we covered and make sure I didn't miss anything. So we talked about project phase to make sure we check the project phase and we know like what phases we choose. You should know that the difference between extruded and full volume. Ideally, you want always to use extruded because it's faster. You don't need to do any cleanup. You can ignore all those separation lines next to windows and it will still work. And as I mentioned, the extruded will be able to support the 2.5D geometry soon. We talked about room bounding elements and how to remove them if it's needed. And then we talked about minimum hole area if you want to remove all those holes. We talked about window door calculation methods. We have single panel, multi-panel, and bounding box. Solve adjacency. And we talked about the alignment routine and how to set those alignment lines in your model. Any questions? Okay, so if you have no questions, then it's 11:37. Let's come back here at 11:45, right? So you can take a break. And before you leave, do me a favor, close the current file that you have. If you want to save it, and then open the other sample file. So the thing is just save the whole Revit and open a new instance. Technically, you should be able just to close that and open a new file and everything should work, but it doesn't. It gives sometimes on some machines, it gives like some memory issues. But other than that, everything should be fine. So open Revit and open the other sample file, the advanced sample file. And this time, when we come back at 11:45, I'll give you 10 minutes to export the first floor yourself. and let's see how that goes. And it's an extruded building. It should be fine. You may face some issues, but you should be able to get through most of that. And by that, I officially pause recording. I will remember, Sergio, don't worry. You can take a break and I can answer questions so we can debug that. If I can find how to pause recording, I will pause it. Okay, more. Okay, so I hope you had a chance to get some coffee, tea, and in particular, because in this part, you're going to do some work. So anyone was successful to export the whole first level already? If not, what are the issues that you faced if you want to share? So we see what are the most common issues that you face, and then we can just take it from there.
So I couldn't even get the rooms to show up.
Okay, that's a good starting point. Why do you think is that? Did you check the phase to be correct?
It's in new construction.
Yeah, like would you try that? So the first step is good. Like, so I'm going to click on Pollination, export model, right? So this is new construction and existing. So yeah, it should be new construction, right? I go next. I make sure this is at wall center. Next, I'm not going to select windows and doors the first time, right? I click here, I see there are 31 rooms, 33 and 27. So that's the first thing that gives me an idea of are there rooms or not. So do you see rooms there?
Yes.
Okay, if you see them there, then you click on this plus and create floor plan.
Yep.
And this floor plan that is created by Pollination should have already the rooms set to show up.
Yes.
Worked?
Yep.
Okay, great. So probably what you did, you tried to use the default Revit floor plans, the ones that they had. Maybe this is a good time for people who don't know Revit much, including myself, is like sometimes you get this, and that's why we basically put this option here for you to create a floor plan so you can basically set up the view the way that you need it. But if you don't, the setting for this is here under properties. There is a place for visibility graphic overrides. I think it's called VG is the shortcut, is it? I forgot. So if you do VG, it will show up. Then you can go in under rooms. So if you press R, it will go to rooms. And then you can select basically interior fill and reference to be on. And if you apply or press OK, they will show up. So if you go to section and you want them to show up, so this is the place to edit it. Visibility, graphics, override. But many times if you get the models and you have, you know, BIM manager, someone, and they give you this, many of the Revit files, you can't edit this because there is a view template. So they're using a template. So then in that case, you have to go and edit that template. So you just click on that template and edit it. Again, this is related to Revit, not really related to Pollination, but something good to know. For debugging, my suggestion is always use the Pollination ones because they will show you what you need to see.
Yeah, it still doesn't show using the Pollination. So I created the floor plan with the Pollination and it still is empty in the next, in step 6.
Do you want to share your screen? So let me stop in debug. Anyone else? Where are other people?
It's the same thing. Just step 6, it's just empty.
You don't see the room. So did you close Revit and open it again from scratch? Yep. Okay, let me, and is it everyone else has this issue? Anyone else? Let me stop sharing. Let's go ahead if you want. One of you
Yep,
wants
let
to
me
share.
find the screen. I think it's this one.
Okay.
So I have, that's the
Yeah, you'll
pollination
see
floor
them.
plan.
Yeah, you see all of them.
Yeah, and then in step 6, it's empty.
Oh, it happens in step 6. You say, oh, because you were making a modification in Revit and you didn't click on modify. Cancel that operation in Revit. So you see you were selecting shades or you were doing something in
Oh,
Revit.
okay.
So just cancel that. Basically, you locked the whole what Revit could do. So now
So I
go back and then come here. Go back to step 4. I would do it again. So you just go 3. Can you close this and open it again? I think like it refreshes from Revit. So let's see. Why do I have so many separation lines there? Oh, okay, because probably that's the model that comes. Okay, this is okay. Can you click on compute volumes? There, okay. And then things looks good. Go next, next, next. So we see all the rooms. Click next. Click here. Setting.
Oh,
Yep. Okay.
it's loading. Okay.
Okay. So I think the problem was the volume was not selected, and the other one you had an active command in Revit
Okay.
that was
Thanks.
blocking the progress. No problem. So if you want to stop sharing. So Nourish, did you figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I had the room showing up, but preview is just not. Maybe just take time for the preview.
It might take some time. This is a larger model, but if you can stop. Anyone else has any issues? So
Can you go
imagine
over how to get rid of the columns again without changing
Sure.
the street conditions in the model?
Right, sure, absolutely. So, okay, let me share my screen. So this is an interesting one. I like this model because of that. So yeah, you see all the columns, great. So I do this show room bounding. So these columns are going to be trouble. In this case, we have so many of them. So one was to change the room bounding, but if you don't want to change the room bounding, if you go to step 1, there is a setting here for minimum hole area, right? So I set this to anything smaller than 2 square meter, 2, whatever is the unit of the document. And now if I go to level 1 and I need the extrusion height, anyone can help me with the extrusion height? No, okay. Then I'll go
Sorry,
here.
3,800.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what 3,800. I can do this. Go here, go next. Next. And calculus all of them. And this is something that if you want to like quickly check, for example, you can only select one room and then play with that. So for example, I can only select lobby and check if it worked. Like if you want to change this kind of settings multiple times, so you don't want to load the whole floor and visualize the whole floor to see if your setting is correct. So now you can see because of setting that area, I was able to remove all those columns without changing them to be room bounding. Okay. Any other questions? Anyone has the first floor ready to go? Yes, no, maybe. So I'll give you 3 more minutes and then I can do it. For example, I think I should pause the recording right now, but then your blood pressure will go up. I'm not going to do that. Am I even recording now? Yes. Okay, 1 more minute to go. Any questions? Did it just work for everyone? Should we just wrap it up? Because okay, so now I'm going to do it at 12:05. I would like if anyone has any issues or questions, you can just ask, like if anything that was not clear in the workflow, something that has slowed you down, that will be helpful. Otherwise, I'll just go through the process here and then you can ask your questions later. Any questions? How can we do the double height floor for the lounge area? Very good question. I'll cover that. Yes, you can overwrite it. You can overwrite that value for that room. Okay, if you got that far, then you have it already. That's pretty good. Okay, so I have already set the minimum hole area, so I'm not going to change this one, remember, because someone asked. But make sure it says wall center, compute volume, make sure it's the right project face. No glazing for now, no doors for now. Select this extrusion height. If I didn't know extrusion height, I would click here, plus, create floor plan, then open floor plan. Then I either find a section, usually most of the files, they have a section. If it doesn't have a section, you can go inside view and draw a section. Then right click, go to view. You see it's 3800 and then another 3800 and another 3800. And even though I have done this model several times, I'm always skeptical. So I just type them here. And of course, I don't know how to type. So I'll fix this, 3800 and 3800. Again, I'll do it one level at a time. I go with the first level here, select everything, and go there. Something that I just ignored was when I checked the model, I said like check all the separation line, and probably in your model you will see separation lines there, but because it's extruded, it's fine. You can just ignore them. This separation line here is not great, right? It's just making a small edge, but for now I ignore it, and then I'll see how it will become an issue. There are rooms that are not placed here, and there is one room that's missing from here. I'm going to quickly put rooms there. in practice, don't do what I do here and edit the name of the room. So you want to know what is what, right? But I can go to architecture, and this time when I click on room, I'm going to click on this place rooms automatically. I think it works fine. So what Revit does basically finds the 3 areas that are missing and the rooms can be placed in. And it did it. So I have one room here, one room here. And I always struggle with this thing of not fixing them during the workshop, even though I say not fix them. So there are few things you want to fix. The name should be fixed. Then these numbers can be confusing, right? Because now it puts a 2 and the rooms are set to 1. Again, these are the things that you take care of, because when you export the model somewhere else, this can be confusing because there's a room that you read, the number is 236, but it is in level 1. But in any case, I have all this here. Let's go here and check the model that I rendered. So you see the missing rooms are there, which I just fixed by putting those there. But here is a very lovely problem that you get in a lot of models, that the column is close enough to wall that Revit basically, instead of doing it as a whole, it connects it in how it finds it. So where is this in the model? It's down here, right? So if you zoom in, what Revit does, it goes here and says, oh, this is room bounding, this is room bounding, they're close enough. So let me go through this and do this like this. So again, I'm not here to complain about why Revit does the way it does, but I like it to be consistent. So I wish it would have done the same for that roofs and the roof and wall that we had, so we didn't have the leak. But it is just how Revit works. So in this case, I want to introduce you to a new concept that we have for cleanup. So the other concept that we have for cleanup, and it's also hidden here, is called short segment distance. So what this does, it basically tries, it goes and finds in your model any segment that is shorter than the value that you put here, and it will automatically remove it. Does it make sense? So what I can do, if I, for example, put a value of, let's say, 200 millimeter or 250 millimeters, I'm hoping that it goes here and see all these pieces are smaller than 250 millimeters. So it just removes them and it just moves on and continues. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off the ceiling so I can read the name. So this is instruction 108. So I'm going to show you one other thing here. One is you can search for the rooms if you have a large model to find them right up here. The other one is you can sort this by number or by name. So if you want to find things quickly, so you can sort them, for example, by number and find 108. And again, when you have larger models, this becomes more meaningful because you have to go scroll a lot to find a room if you want to find one. And the other thing that I use, but I didn't mention, if you have any rooms here and you want to find them in Revit, you can always right click here and click on select, and it will try to find that and select it in the open views that you have, right? So I'm going to select this single room 108, and I'm going to start setting a value. Maybe I just render it with value of 0, so it makes more sense. Excuse me. So you see that's the problem right there, right? Now I'm going to add, for this short segment, I'm going anything smaller than 250 millimeters. And then I'm going to press apply. And now that is automatically fixed. Make sense? What happened? And you think, oh, this is a great option until this happens. So let me render the whole thing. And talk about another concept that we have. So now I check everything here. looks really good. I mean, I didn't go back, so these rooms are missing. Oh, this problem is solved, and you feel really happy, right? But now go and do this. Click on this validate command and try to validate model. So one of the features that we have built in whole pollination ecosystem is this validation command. What the validation command does, it basically checks for the basic things in your model that should be accurate. Basically, our agreement with our users is if your model is valid, it will be exported to any platform that we offer accurately. You should be able to import the whole geometry as is with no issues, right? The other thing this validation routine does, it helps you to find the issues before they become a problem in your simulation. Right now, when I did this, it found 2 rooms are colliding, right? I can click here, click on here, and then if I click on show, it will show the 2 rooms that are causing a problem. So if I read the error, it says this room volume and the other room volume within a tolerance of 0.003, which is our model tolerance, are colliding. If I zoom in, everything is clean. Nothing is colliding. And that's the place that you can get really confused, right? So the thing is, this is showing you the source inside Revit, right? But what really happened was we ran this routine for removing short segments. And now if I zoom here, you will see what really happened. So because it's removed that short segments, there will be cases that then this geometry, which used to be like this, now it went like this, and that's why these 2 are colliding. So does it mean that you shouldn't be using the 250 short segment? No, it doesn't mean that. There are different ways for me to fix it. One way is to draw an alignment line here, right? So not only I'm using the remove short segment, I can have an alignment line that we already talked about, and I say align everything to that. So after it does this, it basically aligns everything and everything will be fixed. The other option that I have is, excuse me, just go inside the Revit model and use the align command and say align this separation line to here. So again, I can fix it inside Revit. So that's another option that I have. And option 3 is just to use the one that we talked about, right? Instead of trying to do remove short segment, just select all this, select all instances in entire project, and make sure they're not room bounding. Again, which one is the best option? It depends on how much you can change the model, how much control you have. Usually the easiest is for columns just to remove them to be room bounding. But sometimes you have columns that if you remove them to be room bounding, some of your rooms are going to start like go inside each other. So you have to be careful how you use these commands. Again, as Chris would say, like with great power comes great responsibility. The Spider-Man. Well, it's not the Spider-Man, it's the other guy, right? In the Spider-Man.
It's Spider-Man. Oh, yeah.
It's the Spider-Man movie,
right.
but it's not the Spider-Man who says that. I don't know.
Oh, I think his uncle. Yeah, Spider-Man's uncle says that.
Let's just code to make sure we code the right people here. So yeah, like I removed those room bounding things. And now if I go here and I can remove this short segment to be 0, right? Go back to step 5 or 4. I think it's 5. So I make sure it loads all those new rooms that I added. Come back here. And it parses everything. And now look at the model. And it should look okay. And if we run the validate command, everything should run fine. Any questions so far? So now this looks good. This part you see is edited because I just edited that separation line. As I said, separation lines are something that you want to check. People just draw a separation line like as they wish. It's not, there's no good way for us to basically control people on what they're doing there. I can run validate again to make sure everything is valid. And then I can talk about changing the height of that lobby. So everything is valid, right? Do you have any questions so far? I think from here on, I'm going to just do it myself. Is there an option to apply short segment to selected rooms only? In Rhino, yes. In Revit, no. Unfortunately, yes. Because this is mostly because of the UI. I mean, technically we can do that, but it's a lot of work. In Rhino, you can do that, and I'll show it this afternoon. Any other questions? Yeah, okay. So if there are no questions, the other issue that we have here is this room here, right? If you see the 3D model, you will see that this room is actually double height, right? And it's not really extruded. And this is one of those cases that I'm not going to change the whole thing to be full volume because of a single room. I either edit it in other software or just ignore it, because in energy model, it doesn't make that much of a difference, right? And in the near future, again, as I said, this is one of those cases that you should be able to deal with in the extruded mode. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here, select that room. That room is called lobby, right? Lobby 102. So lobby 120, actually, 120. So I can go to 120, it's here. So I only select this, I right click here and select override reset height. This will allow me to basically overwrite this value, right? So I can set this to 7,600. Now, if I go ahead and select everything and do a render or reload preview, and you see in this case, I'm just clicking on the eye, not on the box, because the change that I made is a pollination change. It's not a change in the Revit document. And now you see that this one is the only one that is being adjusted. Usually what I've seen at this point, some people select another room too. They forget to deselect, so you see a couple of them shows up. But otherwise, this is what you want to get. Now that we fixed this, I'm going to go to step 2. This is a fairly clean model, right? You can see this, all these fixed ones, and then it's your choice if you want to include sash or not. I'm going to remove it. I can right click and select all. You'll see they're all here in the back for these rooms. Then for curtain walls, this one, thankfully, is called solid. So you know you should not select it. I cannot tell you like how many times I have seen people select curtain wall panels that shouldn't be selected, and then they get a lot of extra apertures all over the place. So make sure you do that correctly. Again, single panel is totally fine. These are simple. For doors, I'm not going to bother in this model, but we already talked about it, so you know how to do it. So now let's go entry level, check it. It should run. I selected something to modify here. Move that. Did it run again? The thing, let's go here. Anything, I don't know why I'm hitting this. So let me just go ahead again and do this. Maybe because I made that change in Revit and then the plugin didn't really like it. So let me do this. Let me do this. Yep, now it's working. Triggers. So now if I select everything in preview, I mean, I can already see the apertures are here. All. So give it a couple of seconds, and then this is level 1. And when usually you get level 1 done, you already are there for level 2, like for 50% of the process. So these are here. This is okay. This is here, right? And I can see the apertures here. What are the instances you use the apply button versus the eye to visualize the update in? So the question is when I'm using this versus this. Technically, in most cases they are the same. I usually use apply when I make changes, like it changes that, like I change the upper limit here, you know, that is this upper limit offset and base offset are kind of in the middle. They're really, we are exposing them in Pollination, but they are Revit properties that we're changing. When I do that, I usually use apply, but apply and the eye are, in most cases, they're the same. Whenever you see something red here, I would do apply. Good question. So this is first level. Any question, any other questions?
Hey,
Yeah.
Mustafa, just on step 6 here.
Go ahead.
It's if it's grayed out on your side, or it's on my side actually, on your side you can, for example, apply that double height to the lounge. Is there a setting that I missed?
Right, you have to right click and overwrite reset height.
Ah, okay, yeah, I missed that. Okay.
That's how, if you want to edit, and you can edit as many as you want. So yes, by default, you cannot overwrite it because that's the one that you put for the level. Good question. Any other questions? Okay, then
I
I'm
think
going.
Mustafa, did you answer? Just Ibrahim was
Oh,
wondering
I
about
missed
a
that.
small gap between two of the rooms.
Right, so there is a separation line there, Ibrahim, right? Because I think the sample model, some version of sample model has another separation line. So if you see between these two rooms, there is a small gap, then there is an additional separation line there that you have to remove. Here, right? You see two separation lines. Is that correct? If you just remove that separation line, then it should be fixed. Okay, great. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So that's good. Then level 2 will be very similar. By now, you should be able to do it yourself, right? I'm not going to change anything here. Second floor plus create floor plan. Yes, there are rooms missing here. Another room, of course, is missing here. This one has this one missing. There's a separation line here, which is fine. The only problem is it will split this window. If you are really concerned, then you can draw it like this, not to go in the middle of the window. So it depends on what you use the model for. We have projects that people want to get the exact, size of all the windows, so that's a problem. For this one, it's not. Then what I'm going to do the same thing, right? So you do RM. You want to save the project, maybe.
That's a question.
Go ahead.
With the columns that you were following the workflow of short segment distance, the other alternative is the whole make it small too, right? So is the suggestion you could do either way, either or, right?
Right, you can do either way. And you saw the reason in this time I didn't use that because these ones are very close. So if they are room bounding and I use the whole thing, it won't work for this, right? Because right, because this will be a problem here. Again, you can do combination of short segment and alignment, but that means everything is going to get slower. So it's a question of performance versus like how much freedom do you have to make changes to the model.
Or the other option, I guess the third one was to remove it as a boundary,
Yes.
right? So like, okay.
Yeah, that's what I did. Yes, you have 3 different options to do. So this is second level. I use the automatic placement of rooms. It told me 5 of them are missing, so it put all of them in. Now, if I go here, it looks good to me, right? Second level, wait for it to be parsed. And I can check this and preview it. I mean, I'm stopping myself from saying that this is one of the other things that I really think we should improve. This, when we do preview right now, we do another round of parsing, and it just, as the model gets larger, it gets slower. So this is something that we will work on. So you get the preview much faster than what you see here, especially for larger models, it gets slow. And at some point, if it's too slow, people won't do it, right? So this is interesting. I see everything here. There is another instance of this lobby here in level 2, right? Because I did the automatic placement that I don't really need. So I'm going to go here and delete this. And this is why you need to do preview, right? And check every level, because it's very easy to make mistakes when you just go quickly with this kind of stuff, right? So I'll just go back here. And I hope that you don't mind that I basically make all mistakes in the process. Of course, I can do it like everything works. This is great. We are all happy. And then you go your first real model and nothing works. So these are just normal. We all make mistakes. We all like, in a rush, and you just, some of the steps that you don't do, it's fine, but just be aware that when you do that, it comes with a cost. So sometimes you're going to make mistakes like this. So now I see the second level is fine. And I go back to level 4, and now I'm going to do a third level. Create floor plan. And it's interesting, I think like when they had this contract with Autodesk, like they basically did the first level, they spent a lot of time, then the second level a bit more, and then they hit a deadline, because in third level, they're just like having this whole thing missing as a room. I don't know why that happened. Or maybe it's my sample file, I don't know. But again, you do RM, right? And then you can do place rooms automatically if you want, but be careful when you do automatically, because you saw what happened last time. I got a room that I didn't really want it. So now the rooms are placed. I do the third level, and in third level, we will see a new issue. That is probably the last thing that I'm going to challenge you. I know at this point, probably your brain is just slower than what it was when we started. So we don't want to have so many challenging things, but if we preview the model here, we will see something unfortunate. Not too bad. I mean, it's very manageable, but we were hoping that the first level worked, the second level works, so the third should be fine. But then you see these skylights up here, and they don't look right, right? And then if I check the validation and do validate model, you see that it's to start telling you that there is one, there are colliding rooms between lobby and corridor somewhere. There's something to check. But the ones that I really want to check is it says there are like so many subfaces on top of each other, right? And if you're new and you don't know what's this error, I forgot to show it to you. Like you can always click on this more info, and more info will go and open it on our documentation. It takes you to the issue, and usually it tells you what's the best way to fix it, right? And in many cases, there are automated ways to fix it, but not in Revit, right? So this means the apertures and rooms are on top of each other. And if we zoom in, you can see they are on top of each other, right? And then you think why this is happening. You go in 3D model, you go back here, and you start getting close. And you'll see that if I select the window, or if I actually, not the glazing thing, if I select all instances, or actually I can do something better. If I go hide in view and by category, so it hides all of those. So you'll see they are modeled like this in Revit. They are really on top of each other. So they're touching each other. So when Dragonfly or Pollination in this case tries to project them and export them, they will be on top of each other. So now, is it invalid? yes, technically it is invalid for energy simulation, but it's not invalid for daylight simulation, right? It's fine for a daylight modeling, at least in this case, because these are really the places that you have the frames, right? It's not like you have two glass on top of each other and then it will double the value for, you know, visibility. So in this case, you can basically just ignore it if you run daylight model, right? And if you run energy model, these are one of those cases that I say, I personally would not try to fix this in Revit because it's a lot of work. You know, someone like Conrad would do. If you're good in Revit, just do it in Revit. For me, I would just take it to Rhino and fix it, and I'll show you like how that works. So I'm going to take this model as is. Now I'm going to go to step 4, select all levels, go here, again, give it a little bit of time to parse everything. And now I go next. Context shade we already covered, so I'm not going to cover it here. Sensor grid, I'm not, maybe I even run a simulation when we come back here, but let's go, for now, just go to Rhino and fix that. So I'm going to do this, export HPJSON and save it here. And it should export 102 rooms for us. And then I'm going to go open it here. Advanced model, open. It says, do you want to run the validation? I would say no when I open because I know it already has the validation errors. I can fix them later. It tells me about 2 tiny edges that it found in the model. Again, I ignore them for now, and then we can fix it later if we want. So why am I going to fix it in Rhino? Because this is what it takes in Rhino. I can isolate, I mean, I don't have to, I'm just isolating it to make it easier for you to see how it works. So there is a command called PO rebuild aperture doors, and it has several options. One of them is to merge coplanar faces and then make a rectangular around them. But there are other fixes too, but we don't need them here. So I can just select this and it's fixed, right? I can select multiple of them and it's fixed. So that's again, like that's a judgment call to be made. For me, this is one of those things that I would just go and fix it in Rhino. But if you don't want to use Rhino, if you want to run something, you can spend the time and edit it. But this is one of those cases that the architectural model is not necessarily inaccurate, you know, like it just modeled the way that it looks correct in the documents. But when you want to create an energy model for this skylights, you will have this issue. Any questions? No. So I know some of you on this call would say, this is geometry, thank you, but not really. Like, you know, what about simulation stuff? I want to run things and why you don't run anything here. So the reason is, again, is not because it's not possible. I'm going to just try to run a daylight simulation for this whole model, and then we let it run on Pollination Cloud, and then we even visualize back the results. It's mainly because we are trying to take it one step at a time and make sure we give you enough tools and methods for you to make, I don't call it like an accurate model because what accurate really means, but fit to purpose model. You can create a model which is fit for the purpose of what you're trying to run. For example, we want to make sure all the solve adjacency is in place and works correctly, right? All the validation is there. We want to make sure all the radiance modifiers are exposed so you can adjust them, which we don't have. The whole infrastructure is there, but we're just trying to add all those small things before we come out there and tell everyone just run everything from Revit. Probably you have seen in most of our videos, we say, take it from Revit, go to Rhino, go to other software, do additional checks before you run. It's mostly because we just don't want to kind of we're concerned that people run things wrong and make wrong decisions, right? And we have seen that enough over the years that we have worked with Ladybug tools to know how it goes. So that's why. I hope it makes sense to you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going now to run it under, let's say, Ladybug tools. And so I'm going to go to demo project here. And the way it works, you start a new study here, select a recipe. So for this case, let's do annual daylight. And then it knows it is inside Revit. So it asks you to get the model from Revit. So I can call it annual study, annual daylight study Revit model, right? Then I do get model. And now the process that you just learned so far during the workshop is basically what we're going to use. So I'm going to select these two. Next, doors, I'm not going to bother at this point. So this is all selected and is accurate. I think one of the other things that we should do a better job is if you export the model, we should have the option for you to save that instance of the model. So you don't have to go through this process every single time. So you can reuse that instance of the model after you clean it up once. So that's another thing that you should expect to happen soon. But for now, every time that you go, you have to wait for this step. I'm not a big fan. Again, for context shade, do we have time? I mean, we have enough time. Let me select some shades here for you. Select all instances in entire project. So I go here, plus add shades from selection. So all those shades came in. Then I go next, adding sensor grades. So we have different options for adding sensor grades. The most typical one is you want to add them to rooms, but you can add them to, you know, exterior faces, exterior apertures. If you want to do, for example, excuse me, a radiation study on exterior apertures, you can do that. For annual daylight, we just select the rooms, grid size, and offset distance. If you are a Ladybug Tools users, which I know many of you are, it's very similar, like basically similar concepts. I usually visualize the sensor grids here because I'm always skeptical of things will go wrong if they can go wrong. Technically, you shouldn't have to. But you know. Here you go. So you can actually check the sensor grids too to make sure the size makes sense. The parts that need sensor grid gets sensor grids. And for example, you see there are ceilings here instead of roof, right? Because I didn't set that properties for like exposed, and the Rhino plugin couldn't figure it out by itself. But again, for this daylight study, it's not going to make a major change. So I'm not going to fix that however I can. So now you see that menu, instead of having export, it has a link option here. That means that it will link it to the menu that I was using to load the model. Here it's linked. So now this is where I was. So now it has the model. The next thing that it needs a WEA file. I can either load it locally from my computer, or I can use anything that I have on this project. Let's select Boston. And then I can run it either on cloud or I can run it locally. All it takes is actually clicking on this local and change it to run it locally. But for now, I want to run it on cloud. So I just click on create a study, and this will start running. And that will give us some time to have some questions to be asked. And if you don't have any questions, I have some slides that I can show while this thing will be scheduled on the cloud. Any questions?
Mustafa, just I guess a best practice question rather. it does look like, when you start massaging the model to get you an accurate lines and locations of everything that we need for energy simulation, like we're doing some work in the architecture model itself. So would that make sense, when you go through an active phase project, would that make sense for you to like ask the architecture team to export a detached model so you can do your work for your energy model? Is that how you would?
Yes, that's something that I would suggest to do in most cases. It's really like, this idea of collaborating and waiting for any change to be reflected is good, but usually like it's faster if you can detach and then just do that syncing thing that I said when things changes. Yeah, that's what I suggest to do. So now you can see it's a start simulating. It did the first step, and now like it's running them in parallel on 44 CPUs or computer, and then it should be done in a few minutes. Any other questions? Meanwhile. Let me go to slideshow here. So let's just review this as the simulation is running. So learning points here was, what is remove short segments? What are the things that we have to be careful about when we use it? It's powerful, but you should use it carefully. Again, especially because in Revit, you can only apply to every level. Then the challenges about exporting a skylight, I hope it gave you a sense of the cases that sometimes like how much you need to clean the model. You want to have a valid model, right? Valid model, but you should always have a sense of what does validation mean for different type of studies that I'm doing. So you don't want to, spend a lot of time fixing something that may not really matter in your simulation. And I think the third one is like you get the confidence that you can actually do it yourself. It's not that hard to do, especially in extruded mode. It's just if the rooms are placed, you check the separation lines. Now you know enough to know what are the problems. Sometimes you might have issues with the curtain walls and windows when you get it started. So to get a sense of like how to clean those up, it might take you some time. But other than that, it's just like it's at this point it's very straightforward how you export the model. What are the next steps for the Revit plugin? So it's kind of this workshop that we teach for AECtech is our annual review of what we have achieved. If you came like to the last year, all we could do was just to export that basic one. I hope when we come back here next year, so we can refactor all the export model workflows. The UI is slow in cases. Some of the options are just hidden somewhere that you have to find. Some of the options are just like you have to go through them every single time. So when you do doors and apertures once, you should just not touch it. You don't have to go one over and over. So those are the things that we have to work on and fix. Then we should support a slanted roof in extruded modes. So you don't have to go and basically we want to minimize the use of full volume because in theory, it's great to have it. In practice, it's really hard to get it to work for larger models, which are not usually modeled in a clean way. We all want the architecture models, the BIM models to be cleaner. You're not. It's just they're not. We have to accept it. And yes, it's hopefully gets better, but I don't think it will be always the case. So you always have to learn that the model is not necessarily clean. How do I get it out at the right amount of time? Then the other thing, we want to expose all the radiance properties. So user technically should be able to run everything and visualize it in Revit. I'll show you today, you can do it right now, but there are things with the scale that we have to edit. And this has been there for a while. So just to understand from a development perspective, what we're doing, we are focusing on geometry extraction first to make sure we are like 99% there. You see like this option is still about geometry extraction. And then when we have that, geometry is really the hardest part. The rest are easier and faster to do. Then we can start getting to work on this data visualization and running simulation. And we want to do the same with energy modeling. Of course, you will not be able to run like a next year energy model with all the detailed HVAC custom, but you should be able to set like to be able to run a load calculation, a valid load calculation from inside Revit, which the geometry is solved, You can do all your programs, you can check all your inputs and run all those, or even some code compliance you should be able to. But again, that the last statement that I said, don't hold me to it for next year. Like, I hope we get there. Yeah, the rest is a typical presentation that I do for Revit plugin, and you have probably already seen it. And I review some of these topics. I would only do that if you have no questions. Do you have any questions? We have still around 30 minutes to go. Let's see what happened with the simulation. So the simulation is done for that Revit model that we just submitted. It took around 5 minutes. It's 4.5, which I think is acceptable. I could have done it faster even if I would have let like more CPUs, but I think that's good enough, right? A couple of things that you can see. One is because I ran it on in a public project, all of you can see it too, right? Just go to this page. This means if it was private, the people inside your organization could see it. This is like, this should have taken around 40 minutes if I would have run it locally, around 38 minutes. So if you use cloud, you can see that time thing that runs faster, of course. But I think to me, what is really valuable is now, and now it happens a lot. I mean, we had one for Victor yesterday. It's just like something doesn't work. You don't need to send me that model and everything, and for me to rerun it on my end to be able to debug it. Everything is here. I can go just here. I can really see what was the input model that was submitted, right? If you don't see the sensor grids, it's because they are off by default. So you can see that. So I can see this. I can actually, this is a valid HPJSON. I can open it in Rhino. I might show it to you. I will show it in the afternoon. I can check the weather file to make sure it's the correct weather file. You have submitted everything. And the other thing is, in the web, I can actually click on this visualization and I can check the results on the web. So this is useful daylight illuminance. I have daylight autonomy I can check. I can check continuous daylight autonomy, like all this typical metrics that you want to check. And for example, I can see there is no daylight here, which I would quickly go and say, did I make a mistake, or is it how it's designed? So this is how it's designed, right? There was no window here, so I didn't make a mistake. But you can also, even because I'm inside Revit now, if you check it inside the web, you don't see this add option, right? It's just only preview. Oh, we have one more thing if you're interested is if someone, so one is you can send a link for someone to check, but sometimes people don't have access. They don't want to create a Pollination account, all those stuff. You can also download this HTML. So if you click here, HTML, it basically downloads it as an HTML file for you. So this HTML is self-contained, so you can send it to people. It has all the visualization, all the data here. So if you want, so these are 3 options, right? One is web. The second one was to do it through this downloading HTML. The third one is you can add it to your Revit document. So if I click add there, it takes a little bit of time, but here. So the results are now inside Revit. And you can save it as part of the Revit document and all those stuff. So it's now part of the Revit document. It has everything. And again, one of those things that, and you can add it in different views that you have. So I added that one in 3D view. I can actually add it to the floor plan too. So I can go here and add to this view too. Here. So you can see it here. The rooms are on top of them, but this is a Revit native object, right? It's analysis results. So we can go edit everything that you can do in Revit. You can change all this. But one of the reasons we don't talk about it much, because thank you, Revit, you cannot edit minimum maximum of a legend. So that can be very misleading, right? You can just see something, the minimum maximum values are set to minimum maximum of total values. Then something that might be your maximum might be 25%, and then you think that's 100%. I don't know where the legend is, but that's something that we have to work on, make sure we get the legend right before we go out there and tell everyone just run all the analysis in Revit, right? So I hope you see that it's there. You can, I ran a daylight study. You could basically do the same thing, run energy simulation. You could just select a different recipe, and that recipe that gives you the energy simulation, right? Where is my Revit link here? So here in the project, I could just, in demo project, I could basically just click on this plus and select an energy simulation recipe instead of a daylight one, like annual energy use. And it just works the same. But the thing is, we want to make sure your model that you put in is a valid model, right? The solve adjacency is correct, the program types are correct, the construction set is correct, all those good stuff. But yeah, that's the direction that we're heading. And the good news is we have already built all the infrastructure. So next year, hopefully, is just exposing all the things that we have built so more people can use it. Any comments or questions? I'm not able to open the HPJSON file in Rhino just created from Revit. It's empty when I'm trying to open either in DesignBuilder or the IDF. So probably the reason is when you're exporting the model, do you select all the rooms? You have to select them. If you don't select them, it will only export the selected room. So let me go and try to make the mistake. So let me select only one level here. So if you go here to export, and then you don't select anything and export, it will not export anything. It will be an empty file, right? You have to make sure that you select everything. The reason we have this is because we want to give you the ability to just export part of the model if you want to only export part of the model and debug it. Do you want to check that, Olivia, and let me know if that's the issue? If it's not, we can debug it after this together.
I would
Chris?
just add a comment to that because if Olivia was using an IDF file for DesignBuilder, the one that we'd recommend is GBXML for DesignBuilder because DesignBuilder wrote very good importers for GBXML, probably the best actually that we've seen of all the BEM interfaces out there. So that's what we'd recommend if you want to send your model over to DesignBuilder for setting
and
stuff
even
up
if you do IDF in DesignBuilder, they actually do IDF to GBXML and then they import the GBXML. So just do GBXML there for DesignBuilder. Thank you. Good comment. Any other questions? No? Okay, then I'll continue with my boring slides. I have done this many times. UI should throw a warning if empty. Yes, agreed. Again, like my first option item in the what's next for Revit plugin, this UI is not good. I totally agree. Yeah, like it should throw a warning. Like I have made mistakes of like I wanted to select 2 rooms and it by default it selects the first ones too. And then I export that additionally. That's one on top of the list. Fair comment, Victor. Any other comments or questions? Okay, no, I'll do my presentation for you quickly. So yeah, I mean, many of these you already know, but just an overview. So one is why the Revit plugin exists, because before the Revit plugin, this was our life. And it wasn't fun, right? Just redrawing everything from scratch is just wasting a lot of time from a lot of people. And yes, you probably know I have a history of trying to convince Autodesk to fix it. It didn't really work out, so we had just to do it. And one thing that I think so far you have seen, I know you might have bad experience with GBXML, and I know it's hard to even trust that this new, and I know there have been so many solutions who came and said we solved it, and people tried it and it was disappointing. It works. It's not perfect, but it works. I hope you saw it during the workshop. And every year it gets better as we see more models, as we debug more models. And we are committed to get this to work. I think that's the difference. We're committed to geometry. Yes, in theory, if you have an open geometry with a little bit of opening in energy modeling, can be fine. Not every room needs to be fully 100% closed. But if you start there, you introduce like tens of other errors that you don't even know. The normal of the face will be wrong. How big of that is fine? We're trying just to be basically draw the line in the sand and say like, you need a valid model if you want to trust what you do, right? We are in 2023, for God's sake, let's fix this, right? So we are trying to just push that. We know it's hard. We know it takes a lot of iterations, and we have been doing so many iterations, but I hope you see that we are very close. And this is one of the feedbacks on LinkedIn that people, when you spend a little bit of time, you get used to it. It saves you a lot of time. Again, it's not perfect yet. So this is the world after pollination. One of the things that we have done is we have written direct export to all these different platforms. DesignBuilder is the only one that we are still using GBXML, and they have a new format called DBXML, DesignBuilder XML. So we are planning to support that. So we kind of like can distance ourselves as much as possible from GBXML. And again, I have nothing about GBXML. I think it was a great concept. The problem is the implementation of GBXML currently is not reliable. So we want to have a workflow that you can rely on us. Like if it's a valid model, it should be imported correctly. So you can use it during deadlines, everything. That's where we are trying to go. And that's what I think we have achieved in a lot of projects that we have helped. And there is a video that you can watch for all these models. So we don't use any of the Revit built-in functionalities. And it's because we know that one has issues. If Revit gets better, maybe we use them. I don't know. I don't see any reason for us to use it at this point. Do you need to redraw stuff to work? You don't. You just saw it. You can work with architectural models and massage them and get a very good model. In particular, if the models are extruded, which is like 95% of the projects that I have seen, even more. And again, we are not trying to do anything magical. We're just trying to give you control. You still need to clean up model in most cases. Room and spaces are not placed is one of the most common errors. Misalignment issues, you can use alignment lines. Then sometimes you have complex curtain walls and windows. I think we are in a very good place right now with that. But still, if you find a model that has some curtain wall or window that is an issue, share it with us and we're committed to fix it. We're not in a place to say, oh, that one we are not going to support. I mean, we really want your models should be translatable if they are valid inside Revit. We talked about material that you can export or filter. We talked about room, space, and areas as options. You saw partial model export. By now, you can do you can mix extruded and full volume. Try to do extruded as much as you can. That will save you time. And we have solutions like that, minimum hole area or this alignment line that you can take advantage of to clean up your model without cleaning up the Revit model itself. So this is the Revit model that you get. And with all the cleanup and the things that I just mentioned, this is what you can export, right? And in this case, you didn't have to edit every single room. This is actually one of the very first models that we checked with the Revit, and it was a pain at the time to do it. Now we have the model again. I want to go back. I think now it should be way much easier to get everything done. Oh, curved walls, we didn't talk about it in this workshop, but you can export them. There is an option in the first settings that we didn't talk about, but you can change the subdivision length. So what we do, we take the curve and we try to divide it. By default, it's set to 2 feet. You can actually play with this value to be smaller or larger, depending on how accurate you want the model to be. If you want to be really accurate, then you can draw an area, right? And go center to center of mullion. So you have, again, different options to get based on the accuracy level that you want. There is no limitation on the number of rooms. This is an example exporting to eQuest 250 rooms, to Rhino, to IES VE. This is an example of 2,000 rooms. Of course, when you have more rooms, it's going to get slower, right? So you have to do level by level and all those, but we have no limitation on the number of rooms. The best place to continue for learning is our Pollination docs and our YouTube channel, right? The recording of this workshop will also be available. for you to watch. So it's at docs.pollination.cloud, and you can ask all your questions on Pollination Discourse forum. Some of you we have already helped on Discourse, so you know how it works. You can put like post a public question, you can send a private message. They're all fine, but either way is better than emails. Emails gets lost, right? Don't do email. We can't share screenshots. Emails are not for helping you to get through something. And the best thing about forum is usually like people can get to you before we get to you, and everyone learns from each other. And I went over even for 2 minutes, but that was my last slide. So I think this is the place that I say thank you so much for joining. And I ask again if you have any questions. If you want to just turn on your cameras, maybe that's good too. And we can have a final chat before we wrap it up.
So I had one question. There was an area in the second floor in the advanced model where it was semi-curved. It was like above the lobby vestibule.
Okay.
So you're saying that, yeah, so you're saying that for like those areas, we're doing the area instead of like adjusting the room?
No. You can do rooms and you can adjust the segments. The only case that I say do area, if you have curtain walls on that curved wall, and you want the curtain walls to be exported exactly as is. Okay. Because otherwise the segment might fall in the middle of the window. So you get a small gap inside the window. That's why I said that. Good question.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or comments? Oh, there is something I have done. Oh, that was before question from the past.
You mentioned something about exporting to IES VE and detaching.
Detached versus attached. So in IES VE, you have two types of shades, right? One is local shades. The other one is neighbor. They call it neighbor building or adjacent building. I don't remember exactly. So if you want them to be exported as local shade, then you select that shade and you basically make sure it's not detached, right? It's attached. But if you want them to be exported, if you have buildings around that you want to be neighbor buildings, then you select them to be as detached. So when they are exported to IES VE, they will be exported as adjacent buildings.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Interface, wasn't like vegetation and not vegetation or something. I'm trying to think back to the interface.
Right, the interface by default, if you have vegetation, usually vegetation is, unless you're one of these green thing buildings that are part of your building, is usually detached from your building. So by default, we set it to detached when it's vegetation, but you can change it. That's the default, yes. Yeah, I mean, imagine if someone models that in Revit, and then you want to do every leaf as a shade. Okay, any other questions or comments? And I know I see some of you'll be around for the afternoon for the Rhino workshop. Yeah, okay. That's honestly like when it's in Revit, the whole workshop, I'm a little bit stressed out because I don't know what to do if something doesn't work in Revit. But in Rhino, I think like I'll smile more. I like this went overall, it went fine. I think that thing that some of the properties for some of my selections for apertures goes away when I edit something in Revit. That's a new one that shouldn't be there, but everything else worked as expected. Okay, then if there are no other questions, thank you so much for joining. And then for the ones in afternoon, we'll see you around. Thank you, Sergey. Is it Sergey? Why do I say Sergey? Sergey.
Everybody says that, but that's okay.
I know, like, dude, like I shouldn't make that kind of mistake. So yeah, yeah. Thank you, Sergey. And then we can stop recording. Go ahead, Victor.
Oh, it could be after the recording. I just have a couple comments on the interface while it's fresh. But...
Go. Like I wanted to be in the recording. Why not?
Well, first I just want to say, yeah, thanks for the continuous improvement. like year in, year out. I mean, you guys are true partners with us, so really appreciate it. And I think if you were to share your screen or something, maybe we could just look at it. But one thing I noticed was it step 6 where it does the parsing?
Okay.
I just always find like the parsing and then the preview doesn't actually regenerate the preview when you parse it. And I just don't know why if I go to step 6, I'd have to wait for the preview to kind of refresh.
Because if you have a very large model, for example, the last time that I exported in the app, I didn't want to do the preview, and preview text adds additional time to the process. That's why we made it optional. Maybe
but one of the time it seems to have the previous version preview sometimes active.
Oh yeah,
which makes it even more misleading because it parsed, but it didn't update the preview. So
okay, I see.
Just found it as kind of confusing.
That makes sense. So the cached preview can be misleading.
And then one of the things that I noticed as well is like, I mean, you have the room tag that, I mean, if you were to activate the preview, like it's tagged, but there's no ability without turning off walls, glazing, like basically everything to actually see the room tag. So I wonder if there's a way to automatically make that more visible to users so you can kind of see which room and troubleshoot better. Because I even saw that as like a challenge when you were talking about a space and you had to kind of toggle off things to say, oh, that's admin 126 or something on a floor plan.
Right. I mean, the quickest way to do it, maybe this is something that we can give you settings, because we can give you settings to turn off everything except for wireframe. Right. Maybe we can give you a settings for preview. Basically, you can say which layers do you want to be on or off by default, because that's something that we can fully control in the process of generating the model. Yeah, okay, I see. Because I think for most people, this will be something that I can't find the default that make everyone happy. Let's put it that way. Right. So
right. No, I just meant that
control. Yeah.
It seems like you'd want to be able to see the floor plan tag for troubleshooting because we kept coming up in the course and then it's just not by default visible. So by default, you have to turn it to wireframe or turn off walls and ceilings. Right. Just noticed it came up a few times in this workshop.
Yeah, that makes sense. We can do that to give you control on the layers, like default layers to be on and off.
And then for step 2, I like the fact that you can select the elements in the model, but it wasn't clear that you have to right click to select. So, I mean, you mentioned like lots of different UI improvements, but
I want to hear the UI improvements that you want us to do. So you think here it should be more
like say like select elements in model, like have a checkbox or a box or something. It wasn't clear to me that I had to right
click and yeah,
and
it's
then
hidden.
select it. But I think that's useful because otherwise I would want like a decoupled preview that like a pollination preview window that's always accessible versus having to go to step 6.
Yeah. I want it to be like this. So basically you can
I can't see it, but I can trust that that's awesome. Whatever you
can. So no, why you can't see it here? Can you see it? So I want you, when you do the apertures, basically to be able to see the preview of the window and everything there and do it once, So it should be a tab that I don't have to go all the way to the room to see, oh, now let me see if the aperture is correct. Now go back 3 steps, change everything, go back to the room. You just want to, and even I think you should be able to set the modifier for the glass, construction for the curtain wall, everything, because usually and typically when you use the curtain wall, they will get the same construction or they will have the same radiance properties. So you should be able to set everything up in this step 2 and then just forget about it. Yeah, that's a very good comment.
Maybe that's kind of, yeah, it sounds like we're on kind of the same page there because there's a lot of clicking to step 6 to go back to step 2 or other steps.
Yeah, I think one of the good things is because I'm myself a user. So if they're bad, it bothers me enough that I have to fix it, if that makes sense. So I would love to hear, it's just like, I think that makes us different from some of the other software providers that, that's your problem, not my problem. But It's a painful process for large models. And you know for a fact that I have to deal with a lot of large models. So yes, agreed. That's a very good comment too. And now you know what? When you say it is different because I can say someone asked for it versus like, I feel this can be better. So that's always expedites the process of implementing things. Okay, anything else? Anyone else like who wanted to say something after the recording? No, okay. So let me stop the recording and I'm sure there will be more comments after I stop the recording. So let me do that. I have a lot of comments for Zoom for the